Good morning, Colorado Springs. It's another brighter day in the neighborhood. I'm Angela Jones, and our special guest today is Devin Christensen. Welcome, Devin.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
It was a little bit of a wind up to
For sure.
give three takes to be able to get the beginning of the podcast started. But hey, we're here now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a close friend of my assistant, Emily.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so she wanted to bring you on because you have a special story and you're a fourth generation Colorado native.
Yes, correct.
So let's start first about Colorado, like how long you've been in Colorado. And I know your family has. It
Yeah.
started, like we said, 4 generations ago.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So my family were homesteaders originally that came out. I always joke with people that I'm as native as you can get.
Right.
But then I now have a friend who's actually Native American, and so she one-ups me on that all the time. And we go rounds about it. But yeah, I've been in Colorado. I grew up here, northeastern Colorado. Actually, grew up on a farm.
Okay, so northeastern Colorado.
Fort Morgan.
Okay.
Specifically, yeah.
Now, actually, I have a case where the opposing party is up in Fort Morgan.
Okay.
So there's not a lot up there from what I
Yeah,
understand.
there's not much up there.
Right.
Small town.
Lots of farms.
Yeah, lots of
Right,
farms on the
right.
outskirts. So, yep,
Okay.
for sure.
All right. And so you grew up on that farm, and I understand you had like an entrepreneurial streak from an early age.
Yeah, well, and that kind of goes with the farming community, right? I mean,
Right.
because you're just, if something needs fixing, you have to do it, right? You don't necessarily call a mechanic, you do it yourself. And so you just learn a lot of different things growing up on a farm. And so, yeah, I started pretty young
Right.
doing business stuff, everything from keeping track of chickens and selling the eggs.
So is that your
so-
first business?
Yeah, technically, yeah. Started that. I can remember doing it around 6 years old. I think I started younger, but yeah.
Right. But actually going out and collecting the eggs and then
Yep.
taking them and selling them wholesale or something.
Yep. Yeah. My parents' friends.
Uh-huh.
I was homeschooled growing up, and so we did different things and groups, but I had regular clients that would buy eggs every week, and it was my job to take care of the chickens, clean them, and sell them the eggs. So.
And one of my favorite childhood memories is going up, and I think the earliest I went to Grandfather Mountain in North Carolina I was around 12, and my Uncle Don, he had chickens, and that he sold the eggs. And so one of the things that we got to do was, who got to go out and help, gather the eggs and help
Yeah.
clean the chickens.
Clean the- yeah.
Like that was like a big treat. So,
So that's what we call our cousins. They were the suckers because when
Right.
when they came to the farm, we convinced them that it was some
This is
wonderful thing to
awesome.
go clean the chicken coop.
Right.
And they'd go out and do that. It was very much a Tom Sawyer kind of thing where
Yeah.
convince them it's an amazing experience and they go do it for you.
And we get to
So, oh, yeah.
snap beans and all kinds of things like that. But
Oh,
it was
yeah.
really neat. It was neat. I grew up in kind of a rural-ish area of Florida. Dirt roads and not farms. So it was more dirt roads,
Yeah.
just dirt roads,
Yeah.
mostly in lakes. But yeah, that was cool. And so after that,
Well, yeah, I mean, I grew up there. I started, working as soon as I was old enough to on the farm,
Right.
helping out, running cattle. Eventually, as I got older, I purchased my own semi at 16 years old.
Yeah, I think that's
And,
fascinating.
yeah.
So, I was wondering, you could get a CDL when you're 16.
Well, I had my dad co-sign on the loan, and we got farm plates.
Gotcha.
And so I didn't have to have a CDL. I could run anywhere within 100 miles
Okay.
of my home base. And so, yeah, I did that. Started it.
So, what did
16.
you run? Like, what kind of were you just like picking up, dropping off farm stuff or
All
people
kinds
or
of stuff.
animals or
Everything from wheat, corn. We do a lot of silage in Colorado, where it's like green chopped corn, if you will, instead of the shell corn for the dairies. So I'd haul that.
Okay.
Everything from that to hauling manure, right?
Really?
For fertilizer for fields. Oh yeah.
So, do you just pick up like with the semi? Then you just pick up. They hook the back part on, or did you have the full?
Well,
the
you
front
can
part and,
you can haul all kinds of different things because you can just
Okay.
hook up different trailers, right?
Okay.
So if I'm hauling, big hay bales, you hook up a flatbed. If I'm hauling grain or corn, they're grain trailers for that.
Gotcha.
So there's just different
the
different.
fertilizer trucks.
Yeah, well
Yeah.
that's just an end dump. So that's just a big, basically a box trailer, and you just
Right.
yeah.
That's cool. Animals, you ever, called animals or
I never
vehicles
did.
or-
No,
No.
no, I never did that. At least not as part of like with my semi. Of course,
Right.
we had cattle on the farm, and so we do that more of like pickup and trailer, or smaller
Right,
trailers.
right.
So,
Just moving
yep.
them about and stuff.
Yep.
And so your folks are still there running the farm, or?
Well, they're not running the farm anymore. They
Okay.
retired a few years ago,
Okay.
and so they're enjoying retired life, but the farm's still in the family.
I gotcha.
So,
I gotcha.
yeah.
And then you actually left the farm to do something kind of interesting too.
Oh yeah.
All right, so let's
For
talk
sure.
about that.
Well, this has been about 10 years ago at this point. I'd actually been running my own business in Fort Collins, Colorado,
Okay.
and
Foco.
yeah, Foco, and just had some really profound spiritual encounters. And so I actually walked away from all of that, and I've spent the last 10 years traveling based on the dreams I have at night, and
Wow.
kind of been all over the world doing that. So
All right. So, I mean, is that something you like to share or generally share?
yeah, I share a lot about that. At this point, I actually travel and teach for different ministries.
Okay.
A lot about just spiritual things, right? How to hear from God, how to actually take, like the dreams that you're having and act on them.
Okay.
And so I share on that a lot at this point. But
And so kind of walk me through what you do. It's like you get connected with the church and you come in and speak, or you teach a course, or
well, and currently, and I teach for different ministries like YWAM. I don't know if you've heard of YWAM,
Yeah.
Youth with a Mission. They actually have me come out to their different bases and teach a 4-day seminar for them. I've taught for different churches and
Right.
ministries, but a lot of, I don't know, I help people understand just the spiritual side and nature of life, right? Because everybody has dreams,
Right.
and even if they haven't had them in several years, they had them when they were younger. And a lot of times dreams create a lot of turmoil, right, in people's lives, because a lot of times they're seeing dark things, but that's not all of them, right? And there's some that actually are very life-giving. And so just helping people understand how to navigate that and really how to respond to it. So.
Oh. So, yeah, I am familiar with YWAM. My oldest son, Daniel, did the YWAM Ships program. So have you gotten to go out to Hawaii?
No,
So
not Hawaii. No,
I would-
not
I
yet.
would
That's their
just
big base now.
suggest
Yeah.
that you might need to go out there and teach some of those folks, because he went to Papua New Guinea
Okay.
from there. That was his and actually we were kind of thinking, at least I was kind of thinking, he would actually get on a ship, but he ended up getting on a very small boat and going through Papua New Guinea, with their missions program, coming in and teaching and and serving and things like that, and brought back malaria. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I
Yes.
think that definitely familiar with that. And one of the things that I think Emily and I were actually talking about yesterday was the whole thing about dreams. I remember when I was 6 or 7 and I was in my yard, I remember just sitting there and thinking that this whole existence we have is kind of like a dream. I mean, and I feel like, just from a spiritual aspect, like people keep thinking, hey, you can sleep with when you die. I don't believe that's the case. I think we're going to go out of this, dimension, for lack of a better word, and step into the next, spiritual realm, almost like we're waking up.
Yeah.
Kind of the way we experience, we go to sleep and we wake up into our real life. And I just, it's just a theory that I have that it might feel that way, like we're going to come out of our earthly experience and then into, that next realm. It'll be like waking up and like we're back into the reals of the whole thing. And so I think that's kind of interesting that you sort of, putting this together, like this piece of life that we have when we're asleep. It's very real. It's a very real part of our life, whether we can remember it when we wake up, and we're lucid, here. And now we spend a great deal of our time in that dream world.
We do.
Yeah. So what are the principles that, in general, that you pass on to people about that?
Well, a lot of it has just come, in my life, just from being diligent with them, right? And keeping
Right.
track and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And then I learned that you can actually act based on things you're seeing in your dreams.
Okay.
So for an example, and one of the stories I like to share is, I'd been doing this for a few years, and then at one point I actually had a dream. In the dream, I was crossing in front of Victoria Falls, which is a big waterfall in Africa. I didn't know where it was in Africa, but
But
I
you
knew
could
it was
see
there.
Victoria Falls.
And it was
Okay.
very clear in the dream. And I wasn't asking about it. I wasn't planning on going to Africa. None of that. Like they
Right,
just
right.
kind of out of the blue. Well, after I had the dream, about 3 days later, a couple I know wrote me a letter and said, "Hey, we're supposed to buy you a ticket. Where do you need to go?" And so on a Saturday afternoon, I bought a one-way ticket for Sunday morning. And I showed up at DIA with a one-way ticket, a carry-on backpack, and $3 in my pocket. And I flew to Africa.
Okay.
No contacts,
With
nothing like
$3.
that. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
and obviously I made it back, right?
We think so.
yes.
Yes. I'm not having any exercise too much faith to believe that. Yes. I like that. But did you die?
Yeah.
No. I didn't.
But
I'm here.
and it's just helping people understand that
Yeah.
as you keep track, as you're diligent with these things,
Right.
they're actually very interactive with our lives.
Right.
And you had asked a little bit, what do I teach about dreams? Well, one of the main things is that a dream is like a window.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I can look out a window and I can see good things, right? I can see people talking, kids playing, whatever. I can also look out a window and see bad things. I can see a car accident. I can see someone getting robbed, right?
Right.
But the fact that you can see it is a good thing, right? Because if you can see it, you can respond to it.
Got it.
Right. And so a lot of times when people, they have dreams, they just don't make any sense to them, right? They don't understand it at all. And so they just dismiss it. And they're just like, nah, whatever. It was just bad pizza, right?
Right. Right.
And in reality, if we're diligent with them, we actually grow in understanding.
Okay.
Okay. And it's like learning a new language in many ways. And because of that, in life, we say things like, why aren't my relationships working? Or why aren't my finances working, right? We even pray and ask God, like, God, why isn't this happening?
Right.
Why are these bad things in my life? And then often we'll have a dream that's like kind of like a nightmare.
Right.
And it's scary, and so we just dismiss it instead of recognizing, wait a minute, that's probably an answer to the question I've been asking as to why something's not working in my life, right? And if I can see it, scary or not,
Right.
I can respond to it,
Right.
okay?
Right.
And so a lot of what I do is actually help people, one, kind of restore that place of dreams in their life, because a lot of people, because of traumatic experiences, they're just like, no, I don't want that anymore. God, take it away from me.
Right.
And then 10 and 15 years later, they realize I haven't had a dream in 10 or 15 years.
Or that they
right?
can remember.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And so helping them get that restored, because actually God likes to speak to us. He likes to show us things. I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. And one of the things in the New Testament, Jesus says, he says, I do what I see my Father doing. I speak what I hear him saying, right?
Right. Right.
Well, if he lived as a man, he has to be talking about dreams and visions. Because how else do you see in the spiritual realm,
Right.
right? And so there's a place where I think a lot of people, one of the major questions we're asking is, why am I here? What's my purpose, right? And I don't know, I've just found that God is more than willing to answer that. It's just that we've been either taught or just believe that he doesn't speak to us. And so then we're not paying attention when he does.
Right. You're listening to A Brighter Day in the Neighborhood on KPPF. I'm your host, Angela Jones, and we're with Devin Christensen today. So you were talking a little bit earlier about diligence, about dreams. And so what do you mean by that? Like, what does it mean to be diligent about your dreams?
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll just answer that with a story about my own life.
Okay.
And kind of how I got started on all this.
Okay.
Like I said, it was about 10 years ago. And for whatever reason, God put it on my heart to just keep track of my dreams. But I wasn't having any and hadn't in years.
Okay. Okay.
And so it was one of those things like, okay, I'm supposed to keep track of things I'm not having.
Right.
And so what I did, though, is I got a notepad and pen, and literally before going to sleep, I'd be like, okay, Lord, if you give me a dream, I'll get up and I'll write it down,
Right.
right? And it actually took several days, probably close to a week. And I woke up one morning, and it was that feeling of like, okay, I know that I had a dream, I just can't remember it.
Right.
And so I literally wrote that down, this date, had a dream, don't
Right.
remember it.
Right.
And about 5 days later, I had one and I could remember like a piece of it. So I wrote that down, had a dream. This is what I remember. There was more, don't remember it. And from there, it's just like things just opened up to the point where since that time, I dream pretty much every night.
Right.
Okay. And 95% of them I can remember.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's amazing the kind of things that you can see spiritually and that God will show you about your own life, about other people's lives.
Right.
Again, just being diligent, which isn't a big, I don't know, it's not this big spiritual principle. In the New Testament, Jesus says, take heed how you hear. The one who hears, more will be given. Right? Those who don't hear, even what they have is taken away. Which, I mean, in just our daily lives, if every time you and I had a conversation, I just
Right.
roll my eyes and I'm like, ugh, whatever.
Or you're like, hey,
We're
stop.
probably not gonna
or,
talk much,
hey.
right?
Right. You're like, because why? Why should I tell you if you're not,
Yeah.
going to act on or pay attention to what I'm saying?
Exactly. And so just taking that step of just being diligent has a lot to do with our heart's posture of saying, okay, I want to hear and I'm going to be faithful with it. Whether I understand it or not, I can at least hold it open-handed, right? And just be like, it's here. I don't understand it, but I'll wait until he shows me what it means.
Right. So is that what you would suggest to someone who's like, wants to start, like you said, you didn't have any dreams. You would just kind of go, okay, I've got this pen and paper and I'm going to get up and write it down. I mean, would you wake yourself up or do you just like when you naturally wake up,
when you
write things down?
Generally, after a dream, you tend to kind of come up out of it, right? You wake up, or the next day, if I didn't wake up immediately after in the middle of the night, just in the morning, just get up and making sure that's like the first thing I do is write it down before I lose it, right? Before I forget it.
Right.
And so that's, I definitely recommend that people start there. There's other things, just one of the big things with any of this is what we believe matters. Okay. And I'll just give you a story as an example.
All right.
A friend of mine, and we were staying in the same place, same house, and neat guy, and he'd actually gotten set free of a 11-year heroin addiction, and just on fire for the Lord, and he was the guy that if he felt God was telling him to give a guy his coat, he'd just walk over and give the guy his coat.
Right,
right.
right.
Just incredible guy. Well, at one point we're having a conversation, and he's like, well, God just doesn't speak to me in dreams. And it was one of those moments where, words come out your mouth before you can stop them,
Right.
and my response to him was, hey, you just have a demonic spirit stealing your dreams.
Really?
And I could tell he was kind of taken aback by it. He was like,
Right.
what? And I was like, well, yeah, the parable of the sower, right? Anyway, I kind of explained it to him with scripture.
And that would be the parable of the sower is like the seed gets set on the ground, but it's taken away by a crow.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Which Jesus explains is,
Yeah.
okay, this revelation, this word is given, and a demonic spirit comes and steals it.
Right. And the crow represents that demonic spirit.
Yep.
Or and I know what you're saying, but some people conceptualize that maybe as like, a spirit of darkness or the devil or whatever. Like
Exactly.
That.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so I could tell it didn't sit well with him. Well, a couple days later, like 3 days later, and again, we were staying in the same place.
I don't think
so
anybody
see him.
wants to hear that demons are taking things from them.
No, that is a little freaky.
It's a little freaky for a lot of
scares
people.
a little bit.
Right.
But he comes back several days later, and he's like, hey, I was praying about it, and I actually felt like God said you were right. He's like, what do I need to do? And I told him, and again, it was just one of those moments where it was just kind of like God's grace on it. But I told him, first off, you clearly believe that God speaks. And I said, that's huge. I mean, there are entire denominations of Christians that don't believe that, right? I said, two, you believe God speaks to you. And I said, that also very good, right? But three, you very clearly believe God does not speak to you in dreams. And I told him, I said, who told you that?
Right.
And he thought about it because it was a genuine question. I was like, did a pastor tell you that? Did you read it in a book? And he's like, no. He's like, I don't know where I got that. And I explained something, a little bit about the spiritual realm to him. I said, well, you don't just believe a lie, you agree with a liar. Okay? And I said, when you believe that, you actually gave permission to a spirit to steal that. And he was like, okay, I don't understand it, but what do I need to do?
Right.
And I asked him, I was like, well, are you willing to, and it's this term used in the Bible, are you willing to repent? Meaning, are you willing to change your mind?
Right.
And he's like, sure. And so I led him in this quick prayer. And I was just like, hey, just acknowledge I chose to believe that God doesn't speak to me in dreams. Mm-hmm. And I renounce that belief. And it was very simple, right? Well, literally.
So nothing crazy.
Nothing
You're not,
crazy.
know, casting. He didn't get slain, or
Nope.
no laying of hands, or
no flopping on the floor.
we're
none
not
of
talking
that.
about an exorcist, like in The Exorcist. Nothing creepy or crazy.
No rotating heads.
Right,
no,
right.
None of that.
Okay.
Well, it's funny though. The next morning, he comes out of his room, and I was, cooking breakfast or doing something in the living room, and he just through the roof excited. And he was just like, man, I've got to tell you, he says, the craziest thing happened to me.
Okay.
And I was like, go for it. And he's like, last night I had a dream. It's the first one I can remember having. It was exactly an answer I've been asking God for all week.
Oh, wow.
He says, but that's not the craziest thing. He says, I woke up and I rolled over in bed to turn my light on so I could write it down. And he says, standing next to my bed, clear as day, I could see this demonic spirit.
Wow.
And what it looked like and everything. And he described it, perfectly.
I don't know that I would respond in a way that was excited. I mean, yes, if you mean like freaked out, that's kind of excited.
Well, to be fair, he had been addicted to heroin for 11 years.
Okay,
He'd seen
so
some pretty
he'd
crazy
seen
things.
some crazy
right?
things, true.
It
Okay,
didn't
fair
freak him
enough,
out
fair
quite
enough.
as much as maybe some people. But, anyway, so he describes it. And what it looked like.
Right.
But he said this thing, its arms were like stuck to its legs. And he says it was angry because it wasn't able to reach out and steal that dream.
Oh, wow.
And what's interesting about it is, in that moment, I was like, okay, that's great. Let's deal with this thing, right? We're not leaving it in the house. But
Right.
he shortly after that, he got a different job. He moved out.
Right.
And I bumped into him like 3 or 4 months later.
Right.
And he had a stack of journals, probably an inch thick, of all the dreams that he had had since then.
Wow.
Okay. And I use that to help people understand that our beliefs matter and what we agree to matters. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in our head, we know things, but our heart doesn't believe them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there's a way of changing that. And as we come into agreement, hey, God speaks to me. Right. He wants to speak to me in dreams in this case. Right. Guess what? That changes and we'll actually start receiving things that may have been blocked from us for years.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's really cool. But speaking of kind of amazing things, I'd like to get us back to you landing in Africa with $3.
Oh, yeah.
So, because that's to me now, that's kind of amazing. So how did that go?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, it worked, obviously. You're here, but how did that go?
Well, what's funny is, I had a friend drive me to the airport, right? Mm-hmm. Here in Colorado, took me to DIA. Get to the airport, guy gets out, comes over, pulls out his wallet and says, hey, do you need this? And gives me $300, which I didn't ask for. Because, when I travel, I don't tell anyone how much I need or don't.
Right.
In 10 years, I've never fundraised.
Right,
okay?
right.
Because I just feel like, hey, I guess the best way to look at it is, if I worked for Google and they told me, hey, we need you to meet with a client in Europe, just go to the airport, there'll be a ticket waiting for you, expense everything, right? I would do it.
Right.
I wouldn't think twice about doing it.
Right, right.
Okay? And so I treat God the same way.
Yeah.
Okay? If he tells me to go do something, I can just go do it and he'll provide along the way. And so I showed up, of course I needed that because I didn't even have money for a visa to get in the country at that point, right? And so I have that, I have enough for food. So yeah, I flew. It was a long trip, long layover. But I actually ended up because I flew into Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe. Wow. Because again, back to that original dream of crossing in front of Victoria Falls, I was crossing kind of from left to right in front of the falls. Which, when I looked it up and did my research, that would mean I was in Zimbabwe crossing into Zambia, and so that's what I did.
And so, the whole trip, things were just showing up, just how did you get back? Where did you go from there?
Oh, there's days worth of stories, right?
Right. Let's do the Cliff Notes version.
Oh,
because I think we have just a couple minutes left.
I don't even know how to do the Cliff Notes version. Yeah, I was in 4 different countries. I had 5 flights, never asked for it.
And people just kept giving you
people,
tickets.
I've got tons of stories. People just walking up to me, total strangers, saying, hey, I don't know who you are, but God told me to give you this.
Wow.
in Zambia, again, based on a dream, I actually started and I went and stayed in a ghetto, one of probably the worst ghettos in the area,
Wow.
with a guy until he got set free of stuff. And I just taught the kids and stuff, right? Because as the only white guy in Miles, I'm kind of a celebrity in that
bit of a
sense,
magnet,
right?
right.
Because everybody wants to know, what is this guy doing here? No one else, And so I was able to do that. And the next place God took me and he connected me with was the former minister of information for the country.
Wow.
So presidential cabinet. And again, I didn't have any contacts going over. It's just all the things that God set up and just story after story after story like that. I was there 6 months. Like I said, 4 different countries, and never fundraised, never asked for money.
Well, Devin, if someone wants to get a hold of you so they can, I don't know, have you come teach or, work with them or something like that, is there a way they can do that?
I guess at this point, kind of the best way to do that is honestly just my email. I don't have a website. I do have a podcast they could probably look into, and it's not really a podcast like yours where you do updated episodes.
Right.
These were mostly just teachings that I recorded from teaching for YWAM and other ministries and just uploaded them.
So you announce the URL or?
Yeah, well, it's just it's on Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts. It's just Kingdom Play.
Kingdom Play.
Yeah, 2
Okay.
words, Kingdom Play.
All right, and then your email?
Is dc.dreambuilder@gmail.com.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, it was really, really awesome to get to know you and meet you and spend some time with you today. And I really look forward to hopefully having more time to talk with you about these topics.
All right. Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. This has been a Brighter Day in the Neighborhood. You can join us here every Sunday at the same time and same station. Until next time, have a brighter day.